Yeah, so like Nokia,
You and Siri talked
basically
today, didn't
they failed as a company because they didn't.
Did she say
They
where
had
she
a
was
wrong.
going
They had the
or what
wrong
she came
corporate
here to work
structure.
for?
So the
said
people
she
that
was
weren't
looking
able
for
to
you
make decisions
and
were
a
like
sorceress.
at the head of the company,
You're
and
here, so I guess you didn't
over the
find
course
it.
of 5 years as Apple came to power in the
wonder
sort of
if she
phone
helped
industry,
that
they
friend
were
of
unable
yours.
to make any kind of decision.
Well, also they were stuck with fucking Microsoft and Windows Phone for the longest time.
That was after. That was in their recovery mode. The biggest
Right.
failure was not changing leadership. And they just sat on the same board of
Where'd you find
directors, and the
that?
board of directors were not the right
Serious
people
room.
to lead the company.
We'd
It's
play
like a
in
big
our
case
room
study that everyone in
sometimes.
business learns about.
I was
But
sad one day.
yeah, it was like
and
just one of those
Siri
things where
carved
all they
it
need
for
to
me.
do was just hire
Such a
new
shame
people
she had
to
to
run the
leave.
company.
Well, they fucked up when they fucking signed like a goddamn
Siri
50-year
wanted to
thing
help a
with
friend.
Microsoft
Any idea who it was?
to only make Windows phones.
I bet it felt like
Who
a
the
sure bet at the
fuck
time.
wants Windows
Like
phones?
I reckon at the time they were like, oh, what a
They were
great
like,
deal.
fuck yeah, making phones for Windows, hell yeah.
Yeah, like
and
Microsoft
then,
is kicking ass.
and then Google was like, lol, Android,
One
and
day
then
I
they
brought
gave
her
that to
breakfast,
everyone.
Literally
Didn't
everyone.
ask where she'd
Because
gone.
so
I did.
the only reason the
You
iPhone
said
did
I
well
was
is
too
because of
little and I
apps.
wouldn't understand.
The only reason the iPhone did well is because of
Siri left
apps.
me a gift.
It was an
gift.
overpriced piece of garbage, and then
Yes,
apps
yes.
happened, and then it
Green
became
stone.
the de facto standard.
Yeah.
Like,
Beautiful. as
so
gifts
when
go.
Android came out, Google
Hide it
was
well,
like,
don't show it to
it's
anyone.
open, anyone
worth a
can
lot.
use it, like even manufacturers, and it's all going to be on the
Thanks, great
same
guy.
platform.
Have
So
fun.
any app
I'm
that
not
works with a
playing.
Samsung
I'm
phone
not
will
Yep.
work with a Google phone or a HTC phone. And so manufacturers were like, hell yeah, let's use that to our advantage. Let's make phones with Android so we can get all the apps.
Yep.
So we don't, it's either that or we make our own operating systems, like Nokia tried to do with Symbian.
Which everyone was like,
Which
no,
is
you were
fucking
wrong.
garbage, yeah.
It's like you were just wrong, Nokia. It's nice
If-
that you tried, but
And then Windows came along, was just like, well, let's be the third option, even though like,
no one asked for it.
well, it's the kind of thing where, so if you look at like operating systems, like computer operating systems,
Yeah.
you have Windows, Mac, and then Linux, or Linux-based operating
Wouldn't
systems.
mind a lookie.
And that came about because Windows was like, well, we had sort of Linux-esque operating systems, and then off that,
Linux-esque.
well, you had IBM systems,
Yeah.
and you had DOS. You had DOS systems.
More
and
like
then-
more like NOS.
And then
No,
Windows
that didn't
came
work.
along,
Looking
well,
for someone
Microsoft
who
came
can
along,
craft me
and they
some
stole
armor.
DOS.
Gotta be
Yep.
They
top
released it as
quality.
MS-DOS, Microsoft
Been at it
DOS.
20 years now.
And then that starts
Mastered the
Windows.
craft in some respects,
And then you
if I
had
do say so myself.
Unix, which was
Wish.
sort of the competitor
listen to
to
her. She's
IBM
been sore
systems.
lately.
And then you had Linux.
Snorting every chance she
Then you had
gets.
GNU Linux.
So,
And now you
what
have
kind of
Ubuntu
armor
and
are we
shit.
talking about?
And then
Light, but
off
durable.
of Linux you had Mac.
Constrained
Mac
movement,
is technically
and I gotta
Linux.
be able
Yeah.
to get in it
Yeah. Well,
without
yeah.
anybody's
Same.
help.
Same.
But it's like a
structure.
closed, yeah.
That's
It's the
all.
same
Shouldn't
base,
be
but it's
self-cleaning.
made by Mac.
And
Think of it
how
as
about
like,
you wipe your arse
uh,
off
And
taking
that
this?
worked
How do you
because it went.
How do you explain that to people that don't understand? Like,
So there's like two major frameworks currently in operating systems. Like base level, like if you strip everything off, there's two
Sounds
operating
great.
systems. There's
Can you make
Windows
us like
or
that?
DOS,
yeah.
No,
and then there's
but
Linux
find
or
someone Who
Unix.
can, and I'll gladly
And
meet them.
Linux
you know
runs
one thing
Ubuntu.
when it
Like
comes to
Ubuntu is built off
If it's
Linux, and
got
like
to
all of
be
those
durable,
open source
it
things
can't
are
be
built off
right.
Linux.
Yeah.
It can.
Like the
Just
Linux
needs the
base,
proper
and so
tools
is
to
Mac.
make it.
Mac is
Tools like the
technically
folk
based
at
off
Clan
Linux, but
Tordoff
it's
use
closed
on
source, which is fine.
Joanna.
They're allowed
Yes.
to do that
Yeah.
because it's
Time
their
again to
software.
stay
Well, yeah,
silent
it's their
when I talk to
proprietary
customers.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why you see a lot of
Those
like software
nonsense
developers with
Gallagher
Macs.
legends
Even though it makes no people are like,
It
oh,
ain't
why do
legend,
if you write
and it
software,
ain't
why don't you use
nonsense.
Windows?
Yeah.
My
Because
granddad
Macs
would go to Unvik for
run
his armour.
Linux, which is
Said
a
Tordoff
traditionally a
folk made the
software
best.
sort
Correct.
of
Till last
operating
year
system.
then.
Yeah.
When
So
a
it's like
giant
more.
ravaged their island.
It's the kind of thing
Inhabitants
where
of the
Mac
land
is
of the dark
simultaneously
would
more
be
user
forged
friendly and
in
less
peace.
user friendly at the same time,
It's
depending
funny
on
how
what
that
level
works,
you
isn't
use
it?
it at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, depending on
Say I
where
find the
you
tools.
enter the.
Will you craft the
Yeah.
armor for me?
Well, that's why like.
So like you can hate Mac,
On
you can
condition
hate
you
Macs
bring
from
the
a
tools,
hardware perspective
but
because
only
they
then.
do some fucked up things.
But if you
But the
had-
operating system is actually pretty good.
But see, I'm confused
Look for
because
the
okay, here's
tools.
where I get a little miffed,
Sure.
right? And this could just be because I don't know a ton of like I know you know me well enough at this point to know I know a decent amount about computers and coding and
But
stuff like that.
there's weird things, yeah.
But there's weird things I don't quite understand. Here's what I don't get: is people that are bothered by how accessible iPhones are, right? Because like an iPhone, I can hand it to my grandmother has an iPad and she FaceTimes me on her iPad.
Yeah.
Like that's where we've hit with technology at this point, where it's like I can pick up a fucking iPad. I can pick up my phone and I can call my grandmother in England on a fucking iPad. And she knows how to use that because it's so universal and easy to understand. Like there's no complexity. Whereas Android has complexity, but in having complexity, it has flexibility, and it has depth, and it has the option to have more depth.
That's
Whereas-
that's
whereas, like,
the argument.
Yeah, whereas like an iPhone is
That's
very.
that's why some people don't like Apple products.
So here's my
that exact reason.
So here's my problem.
Sure.
A product that anyone can use.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about this before, and I've said this exact thing. I don't know who originally said it. It's definitely paraphrasing something.
Sure.
Nothing is revolutionary or world-changing unless it's free
Everything's a remix?
and accessible to the poor, right? No, completely different, completely other thing that
Right,
I was
okay.
saying. Right, so
Nothing's revolutionary unless it's free. and
unless it's
accessible.
accessible to the poor, right?
Sure.
So
Then why is Apple so revolutionary?
no, that's not what I was gonna say. Apple is revolutionary because it's accessible to the intellectually poor.
Yeah, it's from a design perspective, it's accessible.
Correct.
It is an expensive piece of kit.
To get but it's we're at a
But
point
it's the
now
same
in
thing
society
with-
where
so are
people
Android phones.
people have decided that is something
It's
that they
important,
need, right?
yeah.
So what I was gonna say was I think the thing that I get confused about is people seem to talk about Apple's ability to be accessible as if it's like some kind of derisive problem, like it's an issue to be solved that it's so accessible. I just don't get why. Like,
It's just wrong. I mean, it
shouldn't
comes
you
down
want
to
to design
what.
stuff to be used?
Yeah, well, I mean, part of it comes down to like those people are probably just projecting different sort of goals that Apple has.
Right.
Because Apple's goals could be we have to make the software as accessible as possible.
Yeah.
In which case they're succeeding. But some people might come along and be like, no, the goal of software is to be as good as possible.
Or as like sophisticated as possible,
Yeah.
or as
and in those eyes, and in those people's eyes, yeah, as Apple kind of fails in some regards.
so then so it's about what kind of metric you want to measure.
It is a subjective thing, yeah.
Because I feel like
Like from a design and usability perspective, Apple is pretty good. Like they're up there. Definitely easier to use than Android.
So is it that thing of who's the guy that runs this? Is it you?
Who's the guy who runs this little fucking fist fight?
What do they call you?
So like
Know how to fight?
Sony Vegas versus After Effects. Sony Vegas is the most accessible video editing
Then
suite
enter the lists,
in the
my
world,
friend.
probably.
I wouldn't say most accessible professional.
That's what I'm
level.
sorry. I meant for people
Yeah.
that do any kind of
Who actually do editing
Yeah.
rather than just.
than just like it's not like Windows.
It's not
Movie
Windows
Maker.
Movie Maker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm ready. Let's fight.
So like that versus After Effects. After Effects is the opposite end. It's so
folk.
complex.
Fish gulpers
It's up there with
finally
Premiere Pro.
found a
Like it's very
foe.
complicated.
Right
Yeah.
But
here, right now,
it's
on
good for a
the
different reason.
field
Is that
of
kind of the
honor,
Android Apple thing where it's like
he'll
Apple is
face
good because it's
none
easy to
other than
use, but at the same time because it's easy to use it
Rivia,
lacks.
the
Well, I mean, Android is getting easier to use.
Yeah.
Android's the kind of thing. Android has complexity because it's open. It's actually more of a comparison between Twitter and Facebook,
Please.
Yeah.
where they're both piss easier to use now, but Twitter has a lot
Cut
more
your
power
road to play
behind
this
it because
game.
it's a lot
Why
more
am I
open.
beside
Like the
you?
Twitter,
I just want to live.
the Twitter sort of
These days,
like
with
what Twitter
streams
is
around,
fairly
no
simple.
fish for me to gulp.
It's
And they's given
you
a
know
sack of
250
flour to the
character or
winner.
whatever messages.
Show
That's
us
it. There's
pity.
direct messaging.
Take a fall
That's
for
it.
me.
You know, it has hashtags, it has @ mentions, and that's about it. Whereas Facebook
Do we
has
want
like,
to take a fall in this fight or fight properly?
no, we're gonna fight properly. We're gonna fucking slice them in half.
Shit. It's a
Yeah.
fist fight, but sure.
Not about to lose on purpose. If you want to win,
All right.
you
Well,
gotta
okay,
No,
beat
continue.
So like, Android phones, they're getting more usable because, especially with like people like Samsung and HTC, like they apply their own skins to it to make it sort of easier to use. But like, if you're a developer or something, or you're more of a power user, you can go in and like tinker with the phone to like as much as you want. You can basically build your own operating
Lost your
system if
nerve?
you really wanted to.
Within that infrastructure.
Yeah, and that's where the complexity comes from. Whereas like Apple is just closed off. Like I would put them, like nowadays I would put iOS and like the most recent version of Android fairly even in terms of usability because they're both, you know, like Android's caught up and Apple has kind of just been doing the same thing, which is why they're so usable because everyone knows how to use Apple products.
Yeah.
Part of it is just when you give people the same UI enough, they sort of intuitively figure out how to use the
They work
UI.
out how to use it, 'cause,
It's the
like,
same
that's-
thing with Windows. Like people know how to use Windows because people have been using Windows for years.
Because they've always used Windows.
Because they've always used
right?
Windows, yeah. Whereas if you give someone like an Unix system, it's fundamentally the same. It's a computer, but like it does things differently, so people get confused.
Yeah, there's iterative differences that you can't
Yeah.
intuitively understand.
So it's the kind of thing where like Twitter is fairly. There's not much to Twitter. but you can make like Twitter bots. You can make all these interesting things. You can use different front ends. You can use like TweetDeck or stuff like that. You can do interesting things with Twitter because it basically just has a system and says, you know, and it has an API and it says, you know, just use it. Whereas Facebook, it's super closed off.
Well,
It
they
has
have
a lot more moving
They
parts to
literally
it.
have like their own closed API.
Yeah.
Have to use if you wanna use
Yeah,
Facebook.
you know, it's a lot more closed off, but it flows between all its different parts a bit more because they have control on how it works, and that's like Facebook is to Apple what Twitter is. I mean, Apple is to sort of Android what
Yeah.
Facebook is to Twitter.
And that's really the lesson from today.
Yeah, is it?
Yeah.
We're
so-
from Nokia to just complaining about Apple PC again.
And well, it happens to us a lot. We'll see
Yeah.
you guys next time. More fighting.